If you're wondering whether a fractional executive makes sense for your company in your industry, here's a slightly contrarian answer up front. You might be asking the wrong question, because the industries that benefit most from fractional leadership aren't really defined by industry at all. They're defined by stage, by growth, and by a handful of specific triggers. Adoption generally is higher in some industries than others, and I'll show you exactly which ones: SaaS, professional services, e-commerce, but a couple you also wouldn't expect. But far more importantly, I'll show you the profile that actually predicts whether a fractional executive will pay off. And the situation where hiring one is simply a mistake. Let's get into it. Let's start by reframing the question because it'll save you a costly mistake. People ask, is my industry right for a fractional executive? But industry alone is a weak predictor. The strong predictors are your stage, your revenue, and whether you're hitting a specific trigger. That said, adoption really is higher in some industries than others, and this is not a fringe trend. The demand for interim fractional CMO executives has grown more than 300% since 2020. The model has gone fully mainstream. Ranked by relative adoption, tech and SaaS lead by a wide margin, followed by PE-backed companies, healthcare, professional services, consumer, and retail. But here's what every one of those high adoption industries has in common. They all hit growth inflection points where they need senior expertise faster than they could hire it full time. So the real profile that it benefits, you're past the earliest stage, but you're not yet large enterprise. Roughly $1 to $50 million in revenue. You're growing, you're changing fast, and you have a specific senior gap. No marketing strategy, no financial visibility, no operational structure. If that describes you, your industry almost doesn't matter. You're a fit. And if it doesn't, the single hottest industry on the list, it's not going to change your answer. Industry is the backdrop. Profile is the predictor. So let's go through where this shows up most, starting with the runway number one. Tech and SaaS. Tech companies are the heaviest users by a wide margin, and once you see why, it's obvious. They scale faster than almost any other business. 10 customers to 10,000 in a year. That speed opens up leadership gaps faster than full-time hiring can close them. So a startup with no technical co-founder brings in a fractional CTO to architect the platform. A company that just closed a seed round brings in a fractional CFO to build investor-grade financials. Many investors now treat that almost as a near prerequisite for a Series A raise. And a SaaS company that nailed the product but can't crack growth brings in a fractional CMO to build that demand generation pipeline. That demand isn't anecdotal. Search interest for fractional CMOs surged roughly 600% between 2018 and 2022, and tech led that wave. The payoff is measurable. Companies using a fractional CMO have shown average revenue growth around 29% versus 19% for comparable companies without one. Tech moves fast, fundraises constantly, and lives or dies on growth. Precisely the environment fractional leadership was built for. Second is professional services, agencies, consultancies, law firms, accounting practices. This really surprises people, but it shouldn't. These firms are exceptional at their craft and stretch painfully thin on the business of running the firm. The founder is usually the best lawyer or consultant or creative, not necessarily the best operator or marketer. And the margins rarely justify a full-time C-suite salary. So a fractional COO builds the systems, utilization tracking, delivery process, the structure that lets the firm grow past the founder's capacity. The fractional CMO builds a real business development engine instead of leaving growth to word of mouth. And a fractional CFO can bring financial visibility into project level profitability, which a startling number of these firms are flying blind on. For a business whose entire product is the expertise of people, borrowing an executive expertise on a fractional basis is as a natural fit as you will ever find. Third is e-commerce and direct-to-consumer brands. Part of the consumer and retail category is really high on the adoption list. E-commerce is a near perfect fractional candidate because it's brutally operational and brutally marketing driven all at the same time. And those two functions have to move in lockstep or the whole thing just breaks. A DTC brand scaling fast will trend and slam into two walls almost simultaneously. The first is marketing. Customer acquisition costs are creeping up, paid channels plateau, and they need a fractional CMO who understands performance marketing, retention, and lifetime brand value, not just brand and aesthetics. The second is operations, fulfillment, inventory, supply chain, returns. All of those are going to buckle under volume, and a fractional COO builds the system to handle that scale, especially through brutal seasonal spikes. Most DTC brands run extremely lean and can't justify 2 full-time executive salaries for a textbook case for fractional leadership, covering the exact 2 functions that can break a consumer brand. Before I tell you who shouldn't hire one, 2 quick honorable mentions because they rank very near the top of the adoption data and people often overlook them. The first is private equity and venture-backed companies, and this one cuts straight across every industry. PE and VC firms have turned fractional leadership into a systematic tool. They keep rosters of on-demand CFOs, CMOs, COOs, and deploy them straight into their portfolio companies that need help. So if you're backed by institutional investors, fractional leadership isn't just accepted, it's frequently expected and sometimes flat out required. The second is healthcare and life sciences, which ranks 3rd overall. Complex, highly regulated businesses that need serious financial, technical, and compliance leadership, but often can't attract or afford it full time, especially early on. So if you fall into either of those buckets, you are squarely in fractional sweet spot. And notice the common thread. Both lean heavily on the fractional CFO, the single most in-demand fractional role across the entire market. More than half of all interim C-suite requests are for finance leaders. Now the part most videos skip, when your situation doesn't call for a fractional executive at all, because hiring one will just burn money that a company can't spare. There are 3 clear cases. The first is that you are too early and pre-revenue with no funding behind you at all. If you're a solo founder still hunting for a product market fit with no money coming in, you don't need a fractional CFO. You need customers. Senior strategy with nothing to apply it to is premature. Bringing in fractional leadership before you have something for it to lead, and you've just burned the runway you needed for survival. Second is when you generally need a doer, not a leader. A fractional executive sets the strategy and leads other people. They're not the person who's going to personally run your daily ad campaigns or write your code. If you need hands-on execution, hire a specialist or an agency, not an executive. And third is when there's simply no growth and no change. A stable business that isn't scaling, isn't fundraising, and isn't in any transition usually doesn't have a problem big enough to justify a senior part-time leader. Fractional leadership earns its keep at inflection points. No inflection point, no need. And honestly, that's the perfect place, and that's okay, and that's a good place for a business to be. So let me bring it together. The industries that benefit most all share one profile. Past the earliest stage, growing or changing, with a senior leadership gap they can't fill full-time. That profile predicts fit far more than any industry label on your business card. So instead of asking, is my industry right? Ask 3 sharper questions. Am I at a real inflection point? Do I have a genuine senior leadership gap? And is there enough revenue or funding to make strategy worth applying? If the answer is yes, you're a fit, whatever your industry. And if it's no, the smart move is to wait until it's yes. The companies that get the most out of fractional leadership, they're not chasing a trend. They're solving a real present problem with the exact expertise it requires. Figuring out your industry and profile fit is only the first step. The bigger question is whether you specifically should pull the trigger right now, which role needs it first, what it'll cost, and how to know if you're genuinely ready instead of curious. I walk through the entire decision step by step in the next video. Should I hire a fractional executive? Go watch that one next and you'll know exactly where you stand.